Very few men live a life and leave a mark that will be remembered after they're gone. Even fewer men become heroes during their lifetime. But to be remembered, even revered, nearly 200 years after they're gone, Daniel Boone was that kind of man. Like many men of his time, he came from humble beginnings. Daniel's father, Squire Boone, was an English Quaker who came to America as a teenager. It was right here, on this piece of land, that his father and mother, Sarah, first built a log cabin on a stone foundation above a fresh-running spring. That foundation is the only original piece of his home that still remains here. The house was rebuilt, remodeled, and added on by several people who have lived here since. Daniel was born on November 2nd in 1734. He was the sixth of 11 children. He quickly came to love the wilderness he called home. In the summer months, he and his mother spent weeks grazing the family's cattle in the upper Ole Valley. There he spent most of his time hunting, learning skills that would serve him well as he grew into a man. He never attended school, but his older brother's wife taught him to read and write, and even sign his name. At the age of 13, he finally got his own rifle. He quickly became an expert marksman and began to supply the family table with fresh game to supplement their farming. By the time Daniel was 15, his family decided to move to western North Carolina, where they could have more land. But the Native Americans who already lived there didn't want to share their land. There were plenty of people from different countries laying claim to ownership of different parts of the wilderness. In 1754, the French and the British declared war over this new territory in North America. The local Native Americans were persuaded to fight alongside the French. A year later, Daniel joined the British Army, again to defend his home. The Army marched north toward present-day Pittsburgh under the leadership of General Braddock. The young George Washington also joined the march on its way north. Boone worked as a wagoner and blacksmith alongside John Findlay, a fur trader who had trekked westward to the Ohio Valley. Findlay told Daniel of a place the local Native Americans called Kentucky, a hunting ground filled with an endless supply of wildlife to hunt and trap. It was this chance encounter that inspired Daniel to explore the lands to the west, eventually leading others through the Cumberland Gap into Kentucky. They settled together and built a fortress to protect themselves from the Native Americans who resented them settling there. The settlement came to be known as Boonesboro, one of the first English-speaking settlements west of the Appalachian Mountains. Before the end of the 18th century, more than 200,000 settlers had followed the trail blazed by Boone, making their way to a new home in Kentucky. The only documented incident of Boone fighting during the American Revolution was at the Battle of Blue Licks in 1782, where a group of British soldiers and Native Americans attacked Boonesboro. Daniel lost his second eldest son during that battle, the last skirmish in the Revolution. Not just an explorer, Daniel Boone was elected to represent Kentucky in the Virginia legislature in the late 1700s, and Virginia honored him with an appointment as lieutenant colonel of the state militia. His settlement of Kentucky and continued opening of the frontier is considered his greatest achievement. He eventually became a living legend and the subject of John Filson's popular account, Life and Adventures of Colonel Daniel Boone, 1784. The only known portrait during his lifetime was painted by Chester Harding shortly before Boone's death in 1820. He died at the age of 86 at his son's home in Defiance, Missouri.
It's been nearly 300 years since the first one-room log cabin was built here by Daniel's father, Squire Boone. Since that time, several notable families, including the Mogridges and the DeTurks, have made their home here. The building known as the Boone House was started in 1730. The foundation below the portion of the house on the left was the original stone laid for the one-room log home. A large stone addition was built onto the log home around 1750. Several years later, the log house was rebuilt with stone. The smokehouse next to the main house was likely built in the late 1700s. It was used for smoking and storing meat for the family. The blacksmith shop dates back to 1769 and was similar to one that Daniel's father, Squire Boone, would have had on the property. It was moved to this historical site in 1947. The barn was built in the late 1700s by the DeTurk family, who lived here then. It is a typical Pennsylvania German-style bank barn with an overhanging forebay. The upper level of the barn was used for storing hay, straw, and grain. The bottom level of the barn was used for housing livestock and typically wagon storage. The Bertolette Bakehouse and Smokehouse were likely built in the late 1700s. They were moved to the homestead in 1968. The Bertolette log home was built in the Ole Valley in 1737. It is a prime example of an 18th century Pennsylvania German log home, possibly similar to the original Boone home built here. To prevent its destruction, it was moved to the site in 1968. It was later preserved to a more stable condition. The Sawmill is one of only 3 operable vertical-powered mills in the United States. It was built in the late 18th or early 19th century by Daniel Bertolette. It was also preserved and moved to the site in 1972. In addition to the rich living history found at the homestead, there are several opportunities to enjoy the outdoors. The picnic grove and pavilions are available to the public. However, reservations are recommended for large groups. Daniel Boone Lake is a beautiful retreat for a quiet walk. You can try your luck at fishing with a proper license. There are no lifeguards, so swimming or boating isn't allowed. For group camping, the Wayside Lodge provides an ideal location for cooking and sleeping quarters, especially during the winter months. There are several other areas around the site dedicated for tent camping. There are several equestrian and walking trails throughout the homestead, making for a beautiful time in the country any time of the year. The Daniel Boone Homestead is owned by the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, a state agency. Daily historic operations are managed by the Friends of the Daniel Boone Homestead, a nonprofit 501c3 organization. The mission of the Friends of the Daniel Boone Homestead is to interpret the life of Daniel Boone, the experiences of the Mulgridge and DeTurk families, and the settlement, development, and culture of the Ole Valley in the 18th and early 19th century, and to provide recreational and educational opportunities to Pennsylvania and its visitors. The Friends organize and present over 50 special events and programs annually. They rely on several fundraisers throughout the year, as well as site rentals and memberships to help fund the daily operations. If you appreciate the work of this volunteer organization, we encourage you to get involved. Please visit our website to learn more. We hope you will volunteer your time, talents, and resources to help the Friends of the Daniel Boone Homestead preserve this important part of American history.